Order, order. This is another episode of Reporters Without Order, where we discuss what made news, what did not, and something that absolutely should not have. I'm your host Shiv Narayan. With me, I have two guests. One is our in-house reporter Tanishka Sodi.
Hi.
And joining her is Hindu's reporter Ashna Bhutani.
Hi.
Hi. Tanishka has profiled Subhash Chandra once again. And we'll discuss what's going on in Zee Media, what's going on with Subhash Chandra. And Ashna has done a story about gender gap in ownership of digital devices, including smartphones, especially smartphones. So we'll start with Tanishka. Tanishka, this is the second time you profiled Subhash Chandra, right?
Third, actually.
Third time.
Yes.
So what was the trigger
Hopefully
that what has changed for Subhash Chandra since you profiled him the last time?
So, more than a profile, it is looking at the changes at Zee in the last 6 months, Zee Media as well as Zee Entertainment. He's the founder of both these entities, as I'm sure most people know. And like the story is called Subhash Chandra's Winds of Change because there are a lot of changes happening over the last 6 months. And the trigger to do the story was, or the trigger for even the changes were two major events that happened for Subhash and Zee. Before these 6 months. One is an investigation by SEBI, which SEBI has accused Subhash and his son Puneet Goenka of abusing their position for siphoning funds for their own benefit. So it was a very hard-hitting order. Puneet Goenka has been able to reverse it. Subhash has not been able to yet. And simultaneously, there was this ongoing merger between Zee Entertainment and Sony that was in the works for almost 2 years. And that came to an end in Jan. They did not go through with it. So as soon as the merger ended, just a month after that, we've seen a lot of changes in terms of Subhash's behavior with people at Zee News and at Zee Entertainment, which we'll, I'm sure, speak about in the course of the podcast. So that is the main trigger.
Ashna, what about you? What was the trigger for you that you decided to follow this story?
It's a long process actually. When the pandemic started, I had done a report on how phones, even in Delhi, in a place like Delhi, are being divided in between siblings, where in families where they cannot afford more than one phone. So this is something that I had been looking at on and off. But when the ASA report came, the data was quite striking, and I knew that this is something that we should look at, given how things are moving online slowly.
So Tanishka, in your story, in your profile, I think the story is divided in two halves basically, where the tipping point is what Subhash Chandra said on the Press Freedom Day.
Yeah.
So what led to his speech on press freedom, why it's depleting in India, and the events leading up to that May 3rd speech.
Right.
So, I mean, why this speech is so important for your story, and what did he say in that speech?
Right. I think like May 3rd, which is the World Press Freedom Day, it's not that big a deal in India. Most of us, independent news organizations or some mainstream organizations, do some op-eds, do some analytic pieces, but nothing really big comes out of the day. But it was a really surprising event this year because Subhash Chandra gave a speech where he criticized India's stance on the press freedom. Not criticized, but he spoke about how the ranking is so low and why that's not a good thing, which was very surprising for anyone who has even remotely been following the media landscape in India, because as we know how polarized it has become, especially the television media, and Zee News has sort of been leading this very polarized TV media. Subhash Chandra is known to be very close to the government. In fact, when Modi government came to power in 2014, he had told his employees, as I was told when I did the last story, he had told the employees that now we have equity in the government, and he was very open with his support. He also campaigned for Modi personally, and he became a Rajya Sabha MP independently, but he had the BJP support. So it's no secret how close he is to the government. So this was a very surprising speech, so to say, where he, criticized that, like, he spoke about how this is not okay, the fact that we're lacking in terms of press freedom. And obviously, seeing that, we knew that there was something more than what meets the eye. It's not just concern for his fellow colleagues in the fraternity. There's much more to it. And in the course of the story, it is behind paywall. It is for subscribers only. So I'm not going to reveal everything. But a lot of people have told me, a lot of people who've been close to Subhash Chandra, that he's been in, I mean, this is fact that he has been drowning in debt in the last few years. There have been a lot of illegalities of his that have emerged over the last few years. SEBI has only been the tipping point. And according to people in the know, he has been reaching out to the government for help, so to say, but has not been receiving the time of the day by the Modi government. So this was sort of a way to respond to that. And that is one version. What others have said is, with the SEBI investigation still ongoing and does not seem to be turning out well in his favor, if he does end up going to jail, or he is charged with a bigger crime than he already is, he can sort of play the martyr card and say that, oh, I was speaking up for press freedom, so this is what's happened in return, like go out as a martyr, go out with his image more or less still intact. So that is the sort of analysis behind that surprising speech.
But everybody has, maybe most of people who follow media, right? They must have watched his speech. What was the content, everything. But what did he exactly say? Was it shocking to you or shocking for others?
I mean, it was very surprising. He said something that we at News Laundry have been saying, that media in India is kind of in threat and needs to be, we need to be more independent than we are as a fraternity right now. So he's spoke about how it's not good that India's ranking is so low in the press freedom index. But just a month later, he held another press conference where he sort of backtracked. We attended the press conference. He said that he was mostly speaking about AAP government in Punjab, and he said that if the press freedom of India is low, we should reflect. It's probably our fault. And he took a complete U-turn.
But he could be partly right, because it's the media itself which needs
of course. But
so
he
in
sort
terms
of
blame, taking blame, right? Media is also responsible.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But the second press conference was seemed more of a finding an escape from his first press conference. But there has also been a lot of change. I mean, Zee Entertainment, we've spoken about in depth about the changes, the exits, but Zee Media particularly, where Zee News comes, there has... everyone on Twitter has been talking about, oh, they are blacking out Modi and Amit Shah's content from Zee. Subhash Chandra's completely turned. I really did not think this Twitter noise would turn out to be true, but we did find a reduced coverage of Prime Minister Modi and Amit Shah for around 9 days, which was right after the initial press freedom speech. And someone who was very high up in the organization until recently also did tell me that they did receive instructions to not show any of the Modi content.
Live programs of
Yes. And
Modi.
A lot of anchors such as Pradeep Bhandari, who's been seen as a very pro-Modi anchor, also left abruptly quite immediately after that. So there are definitely... markings that point towards this narrative. But Subhash Chandra is also a fairly eccentric person. So you really never know which way his car is going to turn.
So it seems as a pure business interest, like wherever his interests are, he would go there, right?
Business interest, and also maybe just trying his last shot at getting out of things. He's had, besides media, his empire has diversified for a lot of other industries, but everything sort of come falling down. Zee is the last card he has left, which also seems to be in a lot of ways crumbling. So he's known to be a person who never really gives up. He'll always keep trying. He'll never accept that this is it. And he's in his 70s now, that maybe this is the end of his career, at least of starting new things, and of his business career at least. But he's also coming up with his new show again. I mean, it ran for I think 5-6 years earlier, and there was a break from 2018 till now, and now he's going to be back. He's also
back as a host.
Yes, the Dr. Subhash Chandra show.
Hmm.
Right now, so despite being the founder of Z, Subhash Chandra's entire family's stake in the company is less than 4% because they had to get all of it, they had to sell because of the debt he was in. He recently said that we are going to raise it back to 26%, that too without any external funding, which
Borrowings,
raised a lot of eyebrows. Z's stock also went up and down because this has not come officially from Z. So he's going to keep trying. He's not
But the
going to
family
give
has
up ever.
4% stake in Z, and the kind of influence they
that's true.
wield.
Yeah, it's
enormous.
Yeah, it's you wouldn't think that they would be able to yield as much power as they do with such a small negligible share.
So what led to May 3rd speech? One of the possible reasons you're given, like the Chandra family is facing SEBI investigation.
Yes.
And Subhash Chandra was asked not to run the company, right? If I'm correct.
Not particularly. He was not to be in a position of power. Key positions. Yeah. And for Puneet Goenka, that also
So
came.
he can't be one of the KMPs, key managerial
Yes,
personnel.
correct. And a lot of it is, I think, very intertwined with the Z-Sony deal falling through.
The merger, Sony
Yes,
Z merger.
if it would have gone ahead, it would have definitely changed the fortunes of not just the Chandra Goenkas, but also the employees. You know, there were a lot of layoffs, not just of junior staff, but a lot of the senior staff was also let go of very abruptly. So, yeah.
Tanishka has detailed why Sony Z merger did not go through. As Tanishka already mentioned, that story is behind paywall, so you can check it out. What are the reasons that why the deal didn't go through? And what were the other possible reasons that Chandra made that speech on May 3rd?
I mean, he, like I said, has not been receiving the time of the day from the Modi government, which seems to be one of the biggest biggest reasons for this. And like Subhash Chandra is and is not like a lot of things, but he certainly is like very interesting. He always, even the way he talks, his style of talking, whether like I have spoken briefly to him on a call before, or from the people I have heard who he has been close to, he's very muffat, as they say. He doesn't really try to sugarcoat things, and he'll say it as it is. Of course, he's obviously playing a game now too, but he's not one to just like keep it low stakes and wait for things to just magically change. After the deal fell through, he also started coming to office a lot, which was unusual. So from Feb, he started coming to the Zeal office, the entertainment office a lot, and sort of making the key decisions, even though his status currently is chairman emeritus. So that's an honorary position. It doesn't mean that you really get to do what he's doing. Like we've discussed, the power that he holds is very disproportionate to the actual stake.
Now we'll ask you a couple of questions about your story. You were talking about essay report. So if you could tell us, our viewers, what this report talks about gender gap in owning digital devices. Then we'll move to your story, the story that you've done from Haryana.
So this report, it samples, it surveys 35,000 people in the age group of 14 to 18, that is both girls and boys. And we see that around 95% of the households that have been surveyed, they do have a smartphone at home. And around 90% of the males can use it, and 85% of the females can use it. So there's not much of a difference when it comes to ability to use it.
Access to
right,
digital device.
There's not much of a difference there, but the discrepancy comes in when we talk about ownership. So we'll see that around 44% of males own smartphones by themselves, and only 19.8% females have ownership of these devices.
So that'd be gap of around 25 percentage points.
Yeah, more than double. Right. So we see that the discrepancy is with ownership.
Then you looked at the state-wise data, and you zeroed in on Haryana. Why? Because the gap is huge in Haryana.
The gap is huge, but also I wanted to pick a state where it's not a lot more or less than the national average. So that it's somewhat reflective of the gap in the country. And also because Haryana has an abysmal sex ratio, which is why we narrowed down on this. We also picked this particular district because...
The district that you picked was Hisar.
Hisar. So it has a school, it has a few schools, it has an ITI, it has colleges. So it's fairly progressive like that. So the amenities are there, but we wanted to bring out this nuance as to how things are there, but despite that, this gap still exists.
So Hisar is not like one of the backward districts,
No,
right?
it's not.
Hisar is also where Subhash Chandra is from, by the way.
Oh,
wow.
Oh wow.
We have a connection there.
Connection. Z connection. So yeah, so when you reach the ground, I'm sure girls or their parents would have given a lot of reasons why they don't want to give smartphones or digital devices to their daughters. So what was your experience? If you could tell us.
Sure. So when we were on ground, we see that the girls are very enthusiastic about, learning on their phones. So a lot of them showed us the apps that they study on and everything. And the parents too, they are, they say that we want our daughters to study, but at the same time, we can only afford one phone. We only have the means for one. So it just naturally happens that the boys are given more unrestricted access in comparison to the girls. Girls are given the phones, but it's always for a short duration because parents are scared ki acha wo kisse baat kar rahi hogi if she gets the phone. Or another thing that somebody told me was that, so this was a young lawyer who was from Haryana and she had to fight these stereotypes. She bought her own phone with her own internship money, and even then she had to fight with her parents to be able to use it. One of the reasons for that was because people around her kept saying कि अच्छा आपकी बेटी के पास फ़ोन है, आपकी बेटी बिगड़ गई है. So naturally, for no fault of theirs, parents are concerned about one's safety and to what people's impressions are or what society will say about their daughters being online.
So when the girls do use the phones, whether it's theirs or a shared phone, are they also able to use it for leisure or do they mostly use it for educational purposes?
No, actually that's a very interesting question because this is also something that's mentioned in the report, that girls are less likely to use it for entertainment as in comparison to boys.
Boys play more games on.
This is another thing that a lot of the girls said कि भैया तो PUBG खेलते हैं और हमें टाइम नहीं मिलता है.
Who knows if TikTok was around, if things would be different.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think boys are more likely to spend their time playing games.
Right. Again, for no fault of theirs. I mean, they're being given the access, so why not?
What is the fallout of girls not having smartphones or not having digital devices? So how does it impact them?
So it has actually, the age group that we're talking about is 14 to 18. So mostly girls who will be applying to colleges for admissions. So when it comes to admissions and when it comes to wanting to study outside, it becomes an issue because of the centralized examination system that we have right now. Over the last 2-3 years, we've seen that earlier, information was locally available because admissions used to take place in colleges by themselves. But ever since CUET has come into the picture, you have to, download your form online, fill it online, and then, all the information is also available online. And a lot of them don't even know ki kaun sa test lena hai, which exam do we study for, etc. There are some schools, of course, who will tell their students about it, but that's the more elite schools, the CBSE schools. So that is one thing, that access to information, and then the other thing is access to study material, because a lot of since the pandemic, again, a lot of things have moved online, and the coaching class, everybody doesn't have the means to go and study in a coaching institute, so they do study a lot through YouTube videos online. So one of the girls that we were speaking to, she said ki she has to wake up at 4 o'clock, study a little bit online before her brothers wake up, because then they
they'll
get
be
the
using
phone.
the phone.
Yeah.
So in the subhead you mentioned economic stress doesn't curtail dreams. So how does it play? What kind of role do you see of money in giving giving girls access to smartphones or digital devices? So if you said that some households you've seen that phone is being shared, right, where girls will have less access or restricted access. But if somebody is not in position to buy smartphone, then in that situation, I mean, what would girls do?
So most of the houses that we went to had at least one phone. That
Hmm.
was it generally belongs to the father or the
Hmm.
man of the house.
Hmm.
And in some of them, some of these cases also, the father travels for work.
Hmm.
So then they do not have access for those 30 days. She's not able to study online.
Hmm.
And some of them also did say that we wish we had the means to buy a phone for
Mm.
her
Mm.
and to pay for her further studies, but right now we don't.
Hmm.
So of course that is something that comes into the picture.
Hmm.
But the one thing that was really heartening to see was that despite all of this, the girls kept saying ki, we really do want to study, we want to change things. Like our district hasn't seen a doctor, I want to become the first doctor
Hmm.
here, first woman doctor.
Hmm.
So that was really heartening to see.
Very interesting to see how digital device is seen as a means to go through the ladder.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Do the girls also recognize the digital divide? Like, are they aware that this gap is there? Like, I'm sure when you spoke to them, it sort of must
Yeah.
have come out in your explanation of the story also. So,
They-
what was that?
I think they are aware, but again, it's something that's so accepted
Yeah.
that they just laugh about it. Ki, yeah, okay, our brother has, my brother has more phone time than I do. It's just a normal
Yeah.
thing.
Hmm.
And a lot of them also said that they depend on their brothers we wait for our brothers to come back. Ki when they come home,
Hmm.
they will help us with figuring out admissions.
Hmm. But while you were talking to parents, did you come across some of the vacuous reasons the parents have given why access to smartphone should be restricted or should not be given? Or,
Right.
Yeah.
One of them was one mother said that I do want her to study, and a lot of them also have been given tablets from their schools. Haryana is one of the states where
Hmm.
the government did give them tablets during the pandemic.
Hmm.
But despite that, we only let her use it for half an hour a day because who knows who she'll speak to, or is it safe out there for her
Hmm.
on the internet?
I mean, a lot of educational information is available online, right? So you might want to check out if it's competitive examination or CUT examination. You want to check the deadline or the dates when you can fill the form.
Right.
But since girls don't have access or much access to digital devices, so what do they do in such situation? Like, how do they fill up the form? How do they get to know about it?
It creates a sort of dependency on the father or the elder brother.
Hmm.
Then your father comes back home, the girl will ask, ki, I want some time with the phone.
Hmm.
And of course, there are cases where they might not be able to also pursue their further education.
Another thing is about people you have interviewed. Are they from cutting across socioeconomic backgrounds, so they were from one specific socioeconomic background, or?
There were it was cutting across socioeconomic backgrounds. Most of the girls that we've spoken to, that I've written about, were from lower income groups. We also have a case study of someone who did have who comes from an upper class background, and she did have 3 devices at home. So in her case, it was absolutely fine. She said that it was smooth sailing for her. She's applied for CLAT and for COET, and she's hoping to come to DU to study or to a law college.
My last question is related to what if there are government initiatives to ensure that this gender gap is filled, right? If you could tell us.
I think this even the data in the Asar survey is something that's new. This had not been recorded previously, so it's still something that people are yet to explore and
so these
discover.
are first of its kind findings, right?
Right.
In Asar report.
Right, it is.
So how many days did you spend on ground while pursuing this story?
So in Hisar we spent 2 days, but it took me a while with the research and planning and finding the right district and finding the case studies.
And were the women, the girls, hesitant to speak, or they opened up?
They were pretty open that way. I mean, it's they were open with me because I'm also a woman, not a lot older than them. So that way they opened.
Yeah, that makes a difference when they can also
It does.
relate a little.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Do you also agree that female reporters should cover gender issues? Because, I mean, do you see any disparity how male reporters cover gender issues, how female reporters cover gender issues?
I'm not sure. I don't think there should be such gatekeeping. But definitely, I'm sure women can bring a different gaze to the story, or maybe with more empathy. I mean, not to say men don't have empathy, but a lot of times the subjects are more like more comfortable speaking to a woman, I would think.
Yeah,
What do you
I
think?
agree.
You
Yeah.
tell us. You've also done during elections. You did a story about women in Rajasthan, what they want. Did you face any difficulty?
Yeah, so I did one story this Lok Sabha elections from Rajasthan about how women voters are exceeding male
Right.
voters, and I went to one of the tribal districts in Rajasthan. So we went to the tribal hinterland villages, and we met Narega women workers. First, there was the language issue, right? The same time, we were asking about the family and all, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they were very open, but maybe had there been a female reporter, right? I think they would have opened up more
Right.
about their issues. Yeah, it makes a difference. Of course, there can't be any gatekeeping
Yeah.
when it comes to issues covering gender issues
Yeah.
covered by male or female. But yeah, I think these women in my story, they would have been more open towards a female reporter.
Right. I actually, during my election coverage in Maharashtra for the Lok Sabha this time, I found it harder to get women to speak up than I usually do in Maharashtra. I think things are, in Maharashtra this time, it was very, there was a lot of, I mean, not just confusion, but also, within families, there were different opinions on who votes for what. So I remember some women also told me they don't want to speak because their husbands may not like it. And a lot of my stories actually were from the train, whether it's a local train or the train from Delhi to Mumbai. So over there, it was extremely, extremely hard to get women to speak, which usually it's not that much of a... I think women are sometimes, in some scenarios, more reluctant to speak because they obviously have a lot more to, I think, lose, so to say, like including family, how the family would view it, right? Like just a woman owning up and giving her own opinion, not really her husband or father-in-law's opinion, and that too without their consent speaking. I'm sure that is a battle women also have to like fight every day, right?
But Lok Sabha elections are long over, but now Parliament session is in
Yes,
progress.
very interesting
Very
session it has
interesting.
been. Who knows what will happen by the time the podcast is aired as well.
Yeah, a lot of meme material for, I think, meme makers.
Yes, you interviewed an MP from Rajasthan.
Yeah,
And
I mean, this MP, he's the only CPM MP from Rajasthan. That's after 35 years. And,
wow. The visuals of him on the tractor were really
yeah,
doing
on the very
round.
first day, he took out tractor. He wanted to take the tractor to Parliament because it was in solidarity with the farmers who were stopped outside Delhi by the central government.
Yeah.
And to show solidarity with the farmers, he took tractor to Parliament. But before he reached Parliament, it was stopped because police told him that the tractor did not have license or some papers were missing, right? So that's why he was not allowed to take tractor to the Parliament. But he's an interesting character in the sense that he lost Lok Sabha elections 7 times on the trot. And this was the 8th time he was fighting. And he won. Everybody knows that he won because CPM was fighting alliance with the Congress.
But still, I mean, really, we can learn how to not give up from him, right?
Yeah. So the last time he won an election was in 2013. That was assembly election.
Right.
And since 1996, he has been fighting Lok Sabha elections.
Wow. This is very literally fall 7 times and stand up 8.
Yeah. He started his political career in 1979. Since then, he has been with Left Party. पहला दिन था 18वीं लोकसभा का, उसमें आप ट्रैक्टर लेकर गए थे. क्या संदेश आप देना चाहते थे?
वही किसान जिसको आप दिल्ली नहीं आने दे रहे थे, ट्रैक्टर किसान का जो उसको दिल्ली नहीं आने दे रहे थे, वही अमराराम देश की संसद में जा रहा है, वही ट्रैक्टर लेके जा रहा है. अब मोदी जी उसको रोक के बताएं. उससे पहले भी जो असेंबली के पोल्स हुए थे, उसमें आप लड़े थे 18 में और 23 में, उसमें भी आपका वोट, उसमें भी आप 3rd पोजीशन पे थे. मैं या तो 3rd पे आता हूँ या 1st पे आता हूँ. लोकसभा में तो पहली बार आए हैं 1st में. अमराराम की जीत से कोई बहुत बड़ा उपलब्धि नहीं है, और हार जाए तो बहुत बड़ा गम नहीं है. इन राजनीतिक दलों ने हमेशा जब भी कोई अपनी समस्याओं के लिए आए हैं तो धोखा देने का काम किया है और हमने जनता को सबल देने का और जीत दिलाने का काम किया, उसी का नतीजा है।
आपकी प्रायोरिटी क्या रहेगी पार्लियामेंट में? किस प्रकार के क्वेश्चंस आप पूछेंगे?
पार्लियामेंट
मुद्दों पे आप
मुद्दा सबसे महत्वपूर्ण तो होगा कि 10 साल के कुशासन में जितने काले कानून बने हैं वो सब समाप्त हों। अमीर गरीब की खाई है वो सबसे बड़ी भारत में है। आप अंदाजा देखिए ना, 10 साल के शासन में किसान कर्जदार, नौजवान बेरोजगार, व्यापारी का धंधा चौपट है और अंबानी अडानी माला माल है। जो मोदी जी ने नारे दिया आपने देखा, 2 करोड़ को हर साल नौकरी और काम देंगे, किसान को MSP देंगे, काला धन ले आएंगे। मतलब ऐसे नारे दे के सत्ता में आ सकते हैं,
आप भी,
लेकिन टिक नहीं सकते।
आप भी काउंटर नारे दे सकते हैं उनके
नहीं,
खिलाफ?
वो काम नहीं करते ना झूठ बोलने का जो वो करते हैं।
Since we are recording this interview on 2nd of July, yesterday midnight, Inner Manipur MP Professor Bimol Akoijam, he almost roared in the parliament saying that the Indian government is just mute spectator of what's going on in Manipur.
Yeah.
And it's a sad commentary on how the central government has handled Manipur violence. But let's go back to Ashna's story. Ashna, interesting headline, a phone of her own. What was the inspiration behind this headline?
So, a long time ago, I had read Virginia Woolf's A Room of One's Own, where, she talks about access to privacy and private spaces among writers and how that is an issue. So, that very naturally came to me as a headline.
Oh, you gave this headline.
Wow. Usually our desk cuts out a headline and puts it on because they do better.
Yeah, if it's a better headline, of course you can't you would have no complaints.
Surprisingly, even this story of mine was my headline that was taken ahead. That's not usually
really
the
nice
norm.
headline.
So Tanishka is also competing. I'll just read the headline: Subhash Chandra's Winds of Change. So what was your inspiration?
I wrote it just on the Google Doc for my understanding what I'm going with the story, but it surprisingly the desk cleared it. So
Okay. Book or no book, but this is the last segment of this podcast where we ask our guests recommendation. Could be book, movie, or any song or any article they want to suggest. So we'll start with Ashna. What's your recommendation
for
our
on the spot since it's the first time?
No, I'm currently reading God of Small Things. I'm rereading actually. I think it's a nice time to appreciate Arundhati Roy.
Enough said.
but it happens like the same book that you read like during your childhood or college time, right? You will have different perspective.
Yeah.
And if you come back to it and you read like in your 30s or 40s, you'll have different perspective of the book, right?
Yeah.
Now, what's your recommendation, Tanishka?
It's actually, I think it's very much online, related to Ashna's story. It's a piece in Midday. It's an opinion piece called Sona Darling. It's by Paromita Vohra. She speaks about Sonakshi Sinha, of course, a much more privileged person compared to the people we've discussed of your story, but it's basically about a woman's autonomy and how Sonakshi Sinha, with her recent marriage, has really exercised it and how delightful it has been to really witness that. Despite all the hate she is receiving, I mean, imagine she had to disable comments on her wedding photos because she married a Muslim. The hate she was receiving. I went back and I was seeing her old posts on Instagram where the comments weren't disabled, and she was actually receiving hate on those ones as well. Like, people made the effort to go stalk her and make sure that a hate comment is sent through. So this is a very enjoyable piece, just speaking about the autonomy that Sonakshi has exercised and why that is such a big thing for a woman to do.
I mean, it speaks a lot about the times that we're living in, right? How the society has evolved or degraded over the years.
Yeah. What is your recommendation?
My recommendation is articles that you both have written. Article on gender gap and article on Subhash Chandra. You should check it out. And if you have any comment, please comment.
My story about Subhash Chandra and Changes at Z is behind the paywall, but I'd really recommend that our viewers subscribe to News Laundry to read it. There are a lot of interesting things in the story, and at News Laundry, we really believe in holding the media accountable as well. So you'll definitely catch glimpses of that in the story. So do subscribe and read it for more details.
At the same time, we have another NL Sena project, Neat But Not Clean. It's about NEET controversy. We have two reporters who are chasing stories on NEET. One is Basant Kumar, another one is Sumira Mittal. Very soon we'll see a lot of stories on NEET on newslaundry.com, and we appeal to you to help in this Sena project and make us stronger. So log on to newslaundry.com/Sena. Choose this Sena project, neat but not clean. Contribute an amount of your choice. Pay to keep news free. With that, this podcast is adjourned.
Journalism at News Laundry is powered by the public, because when the public pays, the public is served. Visit newslaundry.com/subscription and pick a payment plan of your choice. Pay to keep news free and independent. Your future, and indeed the future of democracy, depends on it.